Welcome to Healing Your Family Legacy, here on the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. Innovative, evidence-based recovery that helps to identify intergenerational trauma, allowing for freedom and embracement of the healing process. Today, episode 92, Shared Trauma and Resiliency, Part 3. And now your host, Dr. Donna Bevan-Lee.
This is Dr. Donna Bevan-Lee, helping you heal your family legacy. Welcome back. Last time we were talking about resilience. It's a big word these days, and I think we have like a general underlying knowledge, but today I want to talk about what it really is and how you can further develop it. Because, as you may recall, I don't think it's something you're born with. I mean, there are babies that are born that seem to have amazing ability for resilience. For instance, like I was born in 1950, the question is whether it was 6 weeks or 2 months early. But, they didn't have incubators where we were. They didn't, it's like, here's your baby. Take it home in a shoebox. He said, the rules were that I had to be fed every 15 minutes with an eyedropper, 24 hours a day. So think about that. If you're a 17-year-old mother and an 18-year-old father, how are you going to do that? Okay. If anyone's ever had children, you know that those first 6 months to a year, it's like you're trying to figure out, when am I ever going to sleep again? When am I ever going to be able to, do anything but take care of this child? Then imagine a little teeny premature baby without the help of all of the amazing, machines that they have to keep babies alive and to help them thrive when they're too early or they're sick or whatever. And, I know because I've heard from my aunts that I was about as ugly as a baby as you've ever seen. Okay. I was about 4 pounds. I was as yellow as could be. I had no hair anywhere. God, I probably looked like Gollum. Anyway, so my parents, my aunts, my uncles, my grandparents all got together, and for the first 3 months of my life, they fed me with an eyedropper every 15 minutes, 24 hours a day for 3 months. And I think that I developed some resilience there. My guess is that, because I probably shouldn't have been living. That was the first time. But I think part of the resilience was that when my father, who was kind of an interesting guy, but when he would do it, he would hold me up on his chest and, help my stomach. Like he would like pat it and he was the most successful because, things weren't connected in there, and that was part of the problem. And so he would help it, and he would hold me against his chest and help the formula go down. And when you think about, if you've ever had children or if you've ever been one, one of the most important things that a baby needs is human-to-human contact. And so even though I was faced with some serious critical situations, every 15 minutes, somebody picked me up, held me, and fed me with an eyedropper. And a lot of different people, like I said, both sets of grandparents were there, my parents were there, aunts and uncles were there. Everybody took turns. And so I had all these people in my life that I didn't know taking care of me, loving me, helping me survive. And, well, obviously it worked. But here's the deal. It's like, was the resiliency there to begin with? I don't know. Maybe. But I do believe that a lot of that, the resiliency I have today, and I'm incredibly resilient, was, it started out with all of those people caring for me. And I think that, even children who have traumatic childhoods, which I had, it's like if they're, along the way, there can be people who will care for that child, will let the child know they're important. For instance, teachers. I had a couple of teachers that thought that, I was great, that the world started not really that bad, but they thought I was great and they let me know about it. I had, a coach that also, really cared about me. My aunts and uncles, my grandparents, my grandmother would spend time with me. And, my feet have always been going, even when I was a little girl. She'd say, okay, well, I think you need a walk. So we'd go walk around this big block. It's still pretty big, and she would talk to me and I would talk to her. And that's probably how she found out about a lot of my life. But, that was so important to me. And when you think back on it as a child, think about those situations, things like, finishing a book all the way through for the first time, or even when you're in the 4th grade, right? I know because I also had a child that when my son started reading chapter books, it was so exciting for him. It's like, I'm reading a chapter book. And when he finished it, he was so proud. And, so the first time you finish a chapter book, or the first time you get a good grade on something you thought that you had just not prepared for, how about the first time you managed to, or the many times, it could be many times. It's like, so we lived in the snow area, and, when we would try and clean the snow away so that we could actually get out of the house or, get over to the road, that felt like such an accomplishment. So I think that, people of resilience have had accomplishments in their lives, A, and B, they also have had people in their lives that cared about them deeply. And so, today when I talk about resilience, I'm going to talk about it, in a way that I thought, I went through training a couple of years ago, called, say, community resilience, or, trauma recovery kind of thing. And it was through the Trauma Resource Institute, which is, I've mentioned them before, in Claremont, California. And their whole thing is community resiliency and individual resilience. And, they go around and teach therapists and teachers and, all kinds of people about how to help people become more resilient. And I was, when I took the training, they said, if you use any of our materials, just give us credit. So I'm going to do that today. I'm going to use some of their material because it's so well done. And so I want to talk about what their definitions of resilience are. One is an individual and community's ability to identify and use individual and collective strengths in living fully in the present moment and to thrive while managing the activities of daily living. And so, basically what this means is that, individuals and communities, when there are crises going on or traumas going on, you can tell what the resiliency is of those people and that community by how well they deal with the activities of daily living while they're trying to deal with a crisis or a trauma. And so I noticed this after the Hurricane Ian that hit Florida a few weeks ago, is that there were some people right after that hurricane that were walking around. They were like professional crisis responders, and they are also part of this, but they were just individuals in the community who were walking around trying to identify other people who might be surviving but who might be trapped or who might be in terrible distress and, was having trouble. These people would be walking around trying to find people. It's like, that's how people who have resilience and communities that have resilience have a lot of that. Okay, we've gone through something. Now let's pull together individually and a community to see how we can manage. And most of the time they do it without thinking. It's a response that is almost an automatic response, but it's also a response that has training, that has understanding. The story I make up is that those individuals that do that are probably people who grew up in families where they did have challenges. It might have been an abusive family. There might have been, bullying in the schools. There might have been, any kind of trauma that children can go through that's ongoing, okay, or that's life-changing. But in the midst of that, there's been somebody or some buddies who have cared for them, who let them know that they were important and valuable and helped them get through it. That's how children develop resilience. There is an organization that it's called the ACEs, and the ACEs is a study that was conducted over several years where children were evaluated about, how their level of trauma, right? And so if you can go online, and I've talked about this before, but you can go online and look under ACEs, ACES, adverse childhood experiences, and you can identify what your ACEs score is, because they identified initially they identified like 6 or 8 childhood experiences that they give you a number of points for, and then you look at what is your ACEs score, and that gives you an idea about how much trauma you had. And then they look at, okay, who survived this well, who are, who of all these people are out there in the world doing things like going to school or, being police officers or, whatever, having families, being good parents. But they basically defined resilience as staying calm and in control when faced with a dilemma or a challenge. I like that. Definition really well, because it kind of pulls it all together. Staying calm and in control in the face of a dilemma or a challenge. And, I've heard over and over again, how on earth did that person do all that when they were, going through this experience? And, like, how do people that work in emergency rooms, the ones who do it well and don't, devolve into alcoholism or drug addiction or anything? Because trauma centers and emergency departments are, well, it's like you see the very worst of the human experience in those places. And people who survive, they obviously have a lot of resilience on board. Okay. They can stay calm and in control for long periods of time of dealing with adverse dilemmas or challenges. And, it's like another really good example is, people who are put in prison for, violent crimes, and they go to prison and they decide, well, I think I'll earn a college degree, and, they get a lot of support for that. And then they come out of prison and they actually use that college degree and they go and they help others. That is a degree of resilience. Now, they might have not had that resilience when they went in, but when they come out, they have it. So it's like that whole idea of, is it nature or nurture? I think most of it's nurture. I think most of it has to do with how we treat people, how we treat children, how we treat adults, and how you treat yourself. Okay. So when you have, think back, and when you've had some kind of a crisis or a trauma, and you think, what did I do? How did I respond to that? Now, usually we talk about it in terms of fight, flight, or freeze when there's some kind of a terrifying or crisis or traumatic event. We do flight, fight, or freeze. It's hard to say. I say fight, flight, freeze, faint. Because some people do. They just like, whoop, they're on the ground. But I'll tell you, for me, it depends on the situation. And when you think about your resilience and how much of it you have, you might think about, okay, if it's somebody else going through something, I might have a different level of response than if it's me. Okay. So like if I see somebody going through something where they need immediate attention, I'm like flying over there. I'm one of the first ones there. Unless, of course, there are other people who are more equipped to handle it, right? But for instance, we were coming back from seeing our son. We were coming back home, and it was during the late summer, and up ahead, there were fires, because there are always fires when it's late summer. But it was dry because we're in a drought. But up ahead, maybe it was a mile up ahead, we all of a sudden we saw all this, like, it looked like smoke. And I said, oh my gosh, somebody has thrown a cigarette out the window. Somebody, it's like, it's a sunny day. It's not like there's lightning happening. So something's just started a fire up there. We better go check it out. Well, we're on the road anyway. So we got there, and as we turned the corner, there was a semi truck that was rolled over. Okay. And we were the second car there. So, we were like, we stopped, and both of us opened our doors and started going toward the truck. Not because we wanted to get something out of that truck, but because we were concerned that there was somebody in that truck. And there was still, it's dust, and it wasn't fire. So it was dust everywhere. And, we got up there, and there was another guy in the car who had stopped in front of us, and he was kind of standing off to the side. And as we went up to the truck, he moved up to the truck. And as we got to the cab of the truck, we saw a young man getting out of the cab as it was laying on the ground. And, I said, are you okay? Do you need medical assistance? It's like he said, no, I'm just upset. And so I went over and chatted with him for a few minutes and what happened. And he told us what happened. And, and he calmed down. He got calmer. And, then we went back to the car. By the time we got back to the car, there were all kinds of people standing back, watching, and a few people coming forward. So, I was thinking, well, isn't that interesting how some people like us, run towards the issue and other people can't do it for whatever reason, right? And, that's how I respond to it when I see it. Now, if it's a gunfight and there's lots of guns, I'm probably not going to do that until the guns stop. But then I'll probably do it. Another example of, just how different people deal with trauma or something really a crisis, frightening. So when I was, probably in my early 30s, early 30s, late 20s. I was a therapist at the time, and one of the things I did was I took women on backpacking tours where we'd go backpack into some place and set up camp, and then I'd conduct workshops like, some legacy style where you're, trying to deal with some childhood trauma. Didn't have it like it is today. But, like that was back in the day when, women's rights were just kind of like really settling in. And so we do some, consciousness raising, talk about rape and sexual assault and domestic violence and those kind of things and how to respond. And so it was like a thing, right? It was fun. And then I also taught them how to survive in the wild and, how to survive many things. So I'd taken this group and we were in the forest in northern Arizona called the area was the Mungian Rim. And, we were camped in this kind of beneath the rim. So we were down at the bottom and, we were camped and we were having a workshop, and I was probably talking and they were talking and people were going back and forth. And I noticed that the sky was like darkening. And I thought, okay, well, this, we probably ought to get ready in case there's a thunderstorm, because you really don't want to be caught in a thunderstorm in the mountains. It's a challenge, okay? So, we kept going, and I said, okay, we need to at least get all our stuff in tents so it doesn't get really wet. We probably should, figure out where to ride this thing out so that it's less problematic for people. And so sure enough, those thunderclouds just came right up to the rim and stopped. And we had one of the most spectacular lightning and thunderstorms I've ever seen. And the lightning was hitting around. Everybody's hair was standing on end. That's how close the lightning was. And there we were, and there it was. It was stuck at this rim, and it had to just wear itself out in order for it to stop. And so lightning was hitting everywhere. The thunder was so loud that it would make your eardrums ring. Okay? Now, what I hadn't told the people there was that I got hit by lightning when I was 17. And so lightning and I hadn't quite worked through that yet. And so as soon as it started lightning and as soon as it started getting close, my response to that, I went to sleep. I couldn't help it. It was like, if you've ever had car sickness, if you have motion sickness and you're in a car before you start vomiting, you start getting really tired and you just can't keep your eyes open. And if you keep your eyes open too long, you start vomiting. But if you just go to sleep, you probably won't get there. Well, that was how it was. I could not keep my eyes open. And I just went to sleep. And here are all these women who are looking to me, their leader, to help them through this. And I am sound asleep. Now, did I try and do that? No. Did I say, oh, here comes a storm. I think I'll climb in my sleeping bag and never wake up until it's over? No. We were in a tent, a low tent. We were all in there. There were probably 10 of us and pretty much squished together and thought, well, maybe we should sing a song or something because this is really scary. And so we were singing. And then the next thing I knew, the storm was over and everybody was mad at me. I said, why is everyone mad? Everyone seems really angry at me right now. I didn't even realize I'd fallen asleep. Okay. So that was my response to thunder and lightning. Okay. So that, the point of that story is that, sometimes when you've had the trauma and it's happening, you may be surprised at how you manage that. Now, was that resilience, how I did that? Was that me being very resilient? Well, I don't know. I made it through, okay? And I wasn't hit by lightning and, I wasn't really further traumatized. But it really did indicate to me that I had a little work to do on that particular issue. And so I did some work on that particular issue. And so, in our next session, just in case you're wondering, I'll tell you about getting hit by lightning because, I've had a lot of traumas in my life and, people who know me well say, I don't know how you're still alive. Sometimes I wonder myself, but I don't wonder too long because here I am. I'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Healing Your Family Legacy here on the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. This channel is made possible because of listeners just like you. If you would like to support the channel with your tax-deductible contribution on an ongoing basis or through a one-time gift, head over to experienceofthesoul.com/support. Healing Your Family Legacy is copyright 2022, Dr. Donna Bevan-Lee, all rights reserved. Our theme music is composed by Dave Croft and used with permission. The Experience of the Soul podcast channel is a production of 818 Studios.
Hey friends, Sean here, your Experience of the Soul producer. I want to take a moment to tell you about something truly exciting. The SoulWorks online community, created by your host, Cynthia Alice Anderson, and available on the Mighty Networks app. If you're looking for a place where you can explore your spiritual path, connect with others, and grow in a meaningful way, then this is for you. SoulWorks is so much more than an online community. It's a safe, inclusive space for spiritual exploration, self-discovery, and personal transformation. Inside the community, you'll find everything from uplifting spiritual studies to soul-centered growth practices, meditations, affirmations, and so much more. It's a space where you'll always be supported and never judged. The best part, membership is free. You'll have access to powerful resources, inspiring content, and a supportive group of like-minded people who are all on their own unique spiritual journeys. And if you're ready to dive deeper, there are premium options available to enhance your experience with a live Monday night talk series and extended, deeper meditations. If you're seeking a place to connect, grow, and nurture your soul, we would love to have you join us in the SoulWorks community and see where this journey can take you. Visit my.soulworkscommunity.com today.